The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, BanksJones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Well, Tennessee is just red hot in recruiting. That will be a primary topic of conversation as the Vols are putting together an actual historic class, believe it or not. We've got a lot to get to when we talk recruiting and why I think the Vols, for the first time under Josh Heupel, I think could be building a dynasty, not just a team that's loaded up and could have a good run from time to time. I'm talking about a potential dynasty. Mike Griffith will join us as he covers the Georgia Bulldogs as only he can. The top 5 seniors for 2024. We'll have this day in Tennessee sports history, stat of the day as well. Joe Milton is wowing people at Pat's camp. Could he be a star in the NFL? And T. Scott Jones from Banks & Jones will talk about a very serious Georgia arrest, not a playful traffic incident. This is much more serious. The show represented by Banks & Jones. Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. They go to trial, others won't. Caleb, how are you, sir?
I am good. How are you doing, Dave?
Never better. A lot to get to on the program, and recruiting will lead us off. Tennessee is just a couple of days away from starting camp, as we will have Media Day covered tomorrow on Off the Hook Sports. So expect a ton of content coming out in the next 24, 48 hours, and then camp begins. And then we're in a routine, and we got a lot to get to and some exciting announcements coming up on the program. But first, it is time for today's tough question. Today's tough question is brought to you by who? Our good friends at Ray Varner Ford in Clinton.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Let's take a look at Tennessee's 2 pickups over the weekend. Deshaun Braum and Lagonza Hayward. Hayward, not a surprise. Braum, not a huge surprise, but the flip from Oregon is significant. Which of these pickups is bigger? Caleb Calhoun, I will ask you that. You got to pick Hayward or Braum.
You see, this one is tough because I do think they're both significant, but I will say this for both of them. And I don't know how you feel about this, Dave, but I think there was definitely some NIL swing in these 2 recruits, these 2 commitments. I haven't said that, by the way, about the previous 2 commitments that Tennessee got out of Georgia. I think they got those just legitimately because there was no reason for them to swing the NIL money. But I do think they swung some NIL for these 2.
Why?
And, well, because Tennessee needs some help in the secondary, and they're not as long-term, and they're not as loaded at tight end as they are at. See, the previous 2 were edge. One, you say why? I think NIL is almost a factor in all recruiting. I think it wasn't as much of a factor for the edge rusher and the receivers they picked up because Tennessee doesn't need to swing NIL for edge rusher and receiver. They get Heupel discounts for those.
Okay.
There's no Heupel discounts for defensive backs.
Okay, but let me ask you this. So you think that Tennessee offered more money than Oregon and Georgia respectively for Braum and Hayward? If you're saying NIL is a major reason and there's an NIL swing, I don't. I think Tennessee won these battles because of, in Hayward's instance, I think it was culture. And Braum, he said he'd always been a fan of Tennessee. And I don't think they re-upped and went to the NIL ATM to get these guys. And I'm surprised you think that, frankly.
I do. I think that by the way, because I think that's the number one thing that players commit for now. I don't think they commit for anything. I think that's by far number one is NIL. So I'm not going to sit there and say that
they're all getting a base, right?
Yes, they're all getting a base. But I'm not going to sit there and say Tennessee is somehow different from every other college that's getting commitments based on NIL. So I think NIL was a factor. But again, I'm just comparing that to the previous two because, Dave, what I'm saying is that the edge rusher and wide receiver they got, NIL was no factor. They might have committed to Tennessee for free, those two, with the Heupel discount. These two, Brohm and Hayward, I would say long-term Laganza Hayward's a bigger pickup. But he's the bigger pickup because of need and ability. Heupel has shown in the past that, and I think you would agree with me on this, Dave, that tight end is a luxury in his system. Like if he has a great tight end, great. That allows him to do a lot of other things he couldn't do. But he can go without an elite tight end and he can play 4 wide receivers. I think that Laganza Hayward provides a lot more depth in the secondary that Tennessee desperately needs and will desperately need after this year. They're deeper now than they've ever been, but they're not proven to be consistently deep there yet. So I think Laganza Hayward, just on need alone, is significantly bigger than Deshaun Brohm. But I will say this, NIL, no NIL, flipping a commitment from Oregon is a pretty big deal, given what Oregon has done recently.
There's a bigger deal with Hayward's recruitment. I'll tell you what that is in 15 seconds, brought to you by Ray Varner Ford.
Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
I'd rather beat Georgia for one guy than flip 3 good Oregon guys. Because that means Georgia doesn't have them. That means probably they're from the South. I mean, that's not a guarantee. I guess they could be competing for a guy from LA, but Southern football players are better. I'm not knocking the tight end and Brohm, and that's great. But I would take beating Georgia and the statement that makes on the recruiting trail over 3 Oregon flips. Am I crazy for saying that?
No, that's a good point. The big one is, they're not going to play for Georgia. Yeah, like them not playing for Georgia is a huge deal.
It's a win-win right there.
Yeah. It's funny because it was one of those, it reminds me of, do you remember, Dave, when, and it was very controversial, and you as a Cowboy fan probably hated it, and I would understand it when the Cowboys signed Greg Hardy, and that was so cringy because he was such a bad dude. But the argument Jerry Jones made that I thought was an apt argument was, if I don't sign him, somebody I'm playing could sign him, and that's worse. And so it's you're right. A lot of these wins is to make sure somebody else doesn't get that person. I think in that regard, you're right. Hayward's a bigger deal. Look, guys, when people think that I'm attacking Tennessee recruiting because I'm saying NIL is a factor. NIL is a factor, period. It's not just Tennessee. I'm sorry. Spoiler alert. Kids commit to schools based on their future and their future financial abilities, not because of the culture of the school. That's very few kids that do that, okay? Most are thinking from a business perspective. That's how recruiting has always been, even before NIL got involved. Dave, you covered recruiting. The most important thing was who's going to get me to the NFL before that.
That was question number 1, but I'm going to disagree with something steadfastly you said. I think that what has occurred is there's an NIL base. I think everybody's offering the unknown out of high school, no matter how highly rated he is, about the same amount of money. And that's enough to be able to go to Taco Bell and do all your stuff you want to do, take a date out, and not have to worry about that sort of thing, right? It's not $1 million a year like James Pierce is getting, or $2 million a year like Nico, because he was highly recruited and Tennessee was desperate, had no leverage. They had to pay him. You want to pay the guys that return like Pierce and Cooper. Pierce had to, but that's the way it's shaking out. So while I would have told you 2 years ago, Tennessee could buy prospects left and right, and that'll even things out, I'm here to give Josh Heupel an incredible compliment, one that I wasn't expecting to get anytime soon. And that is, he can recruit toe-to-toe with Kirby Smart or Kalen DeBoer, who is looking like he's a strong recruiter at Alabama so far. He can go toe-to-toe with those, with NIL being a baseline for all of them. I don't think they're out there throwing millions more at a player that they particularly like. I think there's base pay, and at that point, you're just winning recruiting battles the old-fashioned way, and that's relationships. Caleb, do you disagree with that?
Fundamentally, I think it's impossible to beat out Georgia consistently in recruiting battles based on relationships when Georgia's at its peak. You guys can come at me all day about the 90s.
Why do you think Georgia's at its peak any longer?
If Georgia's decent, if Georgia's good, if anybody but Ray Goff and Jim Donnan are coaching Georgia, I think Georgia wins those battles. Tennessee has never, since integration started, ever out-recruited Georgia when Georgia is rolling with a good head coach. And it's never going to happen without NIL being the equalizer. Guys, I'm sorry. Y'all can. Tennessee's a tier 2 recruiting school. It's not Georgia. It's not Ohio State. It's not LSU. It's not even Alabama in recruiting. And it's not Florida. It's a tier 2 recruiting school. That's okay. NIL's the equalizer. There's nothing wrong with that. And Tennessee is winning battles right now because of NIL. That's perfectly fine. I wouldn't complain. Take the win. But don't think that they're committing to you because they just like the culture better. Okay? I just don't believe that. I've never believed that. I don't believe kids commit for culture.
I think there's some of that going on now. And I'm not saying it's more or less than NIL. I'm just saying that it's a factor. I'm saying that I believe that Tennessee and Georgia are offering about the same amount for the same prospect. Would you agree with that? I mean, there's no huge economic, unless they just liked one guy more than the other.
I think there is an economic gap. I think Tennessee offers significantly more than a lot of other schools. I think Tennessee is able to offer more than a lot of other schools, including Georgia.
Oh, I don't think. No, I think Georgia's. Maybe they tried to get some discounts here and there, but I think they're paying within the ballpark, within 80% of what Tennessee's paying.
This is my pre-NIL take, by the way. There was this idea that back in the day when coaches won recruits, they're winning recruiting battles. No, they're not, guys. It's not like one coach just recruited better than the other. There are so many other factors in play when coaches win recruiting battles. Fulmer didn't win the recruiting battles with Ray Goff. It's just nobody wanted to go play for Georgia during that time. Okay, so it was a totally different story. Nick Saban didn't win recruiting battles at LSU. He was at LSU. He woke up and got top 5 talent at LSU. He didn't win recruiting battles at Alabama. His name was Nick Saban, and kids wanted to go play for him.
I think I have a common ground. I think I have a common ground for you and me. So I want to see if this is a common ground. The one common ground we can definitely come to is Medicare Misty will take care of your Medicare needs, and there is no cost. Medicare Misty there for you and your family and the Medicare needs. Here's the common ground.
19 years this year. Well, I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
All right, so the common ground or the crux of the argument, please hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't yet. We need to get some more people in the program, is this. I believe that Josh Heupel, with everything even, can go toe-to-toe with Kirby Smart and win his fair share of recruiting battles. I say fair share. I'm talking 60-40 Georgia wins the ones that they both really want on an equal footing. I think based off what I've seen the past 3 weeks, and I have been waiting to say this because I didn't want to get ahead of myself. I didn't want to use recency bias. I do believe that you're seeing what could be a group of players that rivals the incredible recruiting run that Tennessee had that was headlined by Cozy Coleman, Deion Grant, Jamal Lewis. I think you're seeing what could potentially be that. We don't know if they're going to be that good. But to me, they're winning those battles now. And it's changed in my mind in just the past 3 weeks, and in particular the past 3 days.
I think all things being equal would include if they were at equal schools with equal recruiting backdrops. But if you took out NIL and Josh Heupel, so like for instance, if Josh Heupel and Kirby Smart were at the exact same quality of recruiting school, then yes, I think Josh Heupel could go toe-to-toe. But if you just take out NIL, it's not really equal. Georgia's a better recruiting ground than Tennessee and just always will be. That's never going to change.
I agree. But I'm talking what's really happening. I'm talking real world, because I hate to tell you, but that backdrop you talk about, Kirby Smart's messed all over with off-field issues.
Which we'll get to.
That backdrop's not as pretty as it was, right?
But Dave, yes, that is true. But you covered Fulmer in the early 2000s. Fulmer, the greatest recruiter in college football, could never beat Mark Richt for Georgia kids. Mark Richt would clean his clock recruiting Georgia kids because Mark Richt was at Georgia.
Clean his clock. Tennessee they hung in there considering it was Georgia kids. But
the only one I remember that worked out was Eric Berry after Mark Richt got there. That was a star. But that was Eric Berry had Tennessee ties.
Okay. But you tell me that Georgia just won a lot of recruiting battles against Tennessee, right?
No, I'm saying no. I know Tennessee won a lot of recruiting battles with Georgia, and I said that's significant.
No,
Georgia, by the way,
you said Georgia won a lot of recruiting battles with Mark Richt, correct?
With Mark Richt and Philip Fulmer, 90% of the time Mark Richt got who he wanted over Fulmer. For
How
Georgia
do you do that?
He was in Georgia.
How about the fact that he had an incredible culture on that team? He did. You have to give that some credence. I'm not saying all, but that had to land a kid or two. Listen, you have a son now. You're going to be involved in this decision making. It's not just going to be up to young Quincy to say, I like this school because they're going to win championships and the chicks are hot. I mean, you're going to have some input here, Caleb.
Dave, Butch Jones got 2 top 5 classes back to back. I don't think that was because of the culture he was running at Tennessee.
I totally agree. More than one ways to skin a cat. As I mentioned, Mike Griffith will join us a little bit later of Dog Nation. Now it is time for 4 Downs, and it's brought to you by our fantastic friends at Don Self State Farm. They are awesome. I'll tell you more about them. Let's get to 4 Downs right now.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, Caleb, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you 4 reasons why Tennessee is building a dynasty on the trail. So I'd like to think, because of 2 decades of service covering the Vols, everybody knows that I'm not just going to have recency bias and tell you that this class is going to be amazing and Tennessee's recruiting is through the roof just because they picked up a couple commitments in the last 2 days. But what I will tell you is I believe firmly that Josh Heupel is on the verge of building a long-lasting dynasty as opposed to just a team that can load up in 2024 or 2025 and win a championship. I think there's more than that. I'm going to give you reasons why. And Caleb, you tell me what you think. Cooper Mays, what should we do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Do it.
Tennessee Center, Cooper Mays here. 3rd down.
Well.
Wait, 3rd down? What type of downs are we doing here, Dave?
I hit the wrong button. Fat fingers. David Sanders, a favorite to UT.
Yes, I think he's going to land at Tennessee. Now, I didn't think that about a week ago, but that's going to be a big one. And look, we're talking about Tennessee at number 5 now. We're going to talk about them in the number 2 to number 3 range before this is all said and done.
Maybe before the end of the week. When does Sanders go again? If you know off the top of your head,
it's in I think the 2nd week of August, so we got a little bit of time before he commits.
Yeah. Okay. By then, I think Tennessee could be in the top 3.
Cooper Mays here. 2nd down.
Onis Konambani has the Vols in the top 2. 4-star cornerback. Thoughts?
I'm pretty sure he's committing to Tennessee. He's a 4-star cornerback. Most experts have him going to Tennessee. He's down to Tennessee and Florida State. Look, again, not culture, but not NIL either. I think Tennessee's going to win recruiting battles against Florida State for South Carolina kids going forward because I think Florida State's going to have some trouble being stuck in the ACC right now with those TV deals. That they're desperate to get out of there. And if you're a recruit, Dave, do you really want to go to that toxic situation where there's the school that's playing at a conference that they clearly don't want to be in? They're making clear they don't want to be in, and there's going to be so much drama until they get out of there.
No, that's worse than a coach on a hot seat to me, because the coach on a hot seat could at least convince me and I'm looking him in the eyes and I can get a feel for him. But there's powers that be that are worth, these guys are worth billions of dollars. They're not going to talk to me, the 17-year-old football player, to let me know if my team's going to be in the conference that I want to play in 5 years from now. I mean,
Yes, exactly.
Don Self, State Farm customer service still matters. For 40 years, they built their business on taking care of their customers. The greater Chattanooga area, call 423-396-2126, 423-396-2126, or go to donself.net. It's right below donself.net. What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Tennessee close to picking up Darian Smith. He is expected to announce on Tuesday. Should be the Vols, not the highest rated prospect on Tennessee's list, but still a significant pickup. And the Vols have proven they've been able to develop defensive tackles in particular and defensive linemen. That's been a real strong suit for Tennessee.
Yeah, and this is one of those that I think he's underrated. I mean, it stands out that Ohio State wants him so badly too, and so I think Darian Smith is a kid that is. I think there's a very good chance that he ends up developing into a very reliable player. Rodney Garner's been going after him hard. I trust Rodney Gardner. Also, it's that St. Francis Academy in Baltimore. Tennessee has a decent pipeline there. Dominic Bailey's from there. And also, you want to build DMV connections. So I do think that
the DMV, for those that don't know,
DC, Maryland, Virginia is what that is, guys. And so, yeah, I think that you want to build those connections. And I do think that a guy like Darian Smith would be a great pickup for that reason. But I also think he could end up being very good.
Yeah. And we haven't even talked about the highest rated prospect that shows that Tennessee could be building a dynasty on the trail. The highest rated prospect is brought to you by the Hemp House. They bring you the highest rated prospect. Caleb, the highest rated, brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary.
I get it. Oh my gosh.
Thank you. With a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. That's the promo code HOOKED. And then this is down the line and it may not happen, but it never hurts to have a 5-star quarterback say, I love you, and I might just commit to you.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
As we wrote about last week, Faison Brandon appears to be headed towards the Vols, and he is the top-rated prospect in the 2026 class. The line of quarterbacks, recruiting-wise, has really never been better. I'm trying to think back. If all these get, let's say Faison ends up signing with Tennessee, when have they had a better run of quarterback prospects? Now, Caleb, I'm not talking about how they ended up playing, okay? Because you and I got a little confused on the Georgia prospect question. I'm just talking about they come rolling in with these stars. When's the last time Tennessee's been on a run like this?
I mean, I can't remember. The only thing that I could, and it was not back. See, the reason it's hard was back in the day, you didn't take a quarterback in every class. So
coaches always wanted to, but you're right. Because when you heard it, you're like, oh, what good quarterback would want to play behind somebody?
Yeah. So the closest I could think, and again, not every class, but from 91 through 2000, I mean, Heath Schuler was a blue chip. Brandon Stewart was a blue chip. Peyton Manning was a blue chip. T. Martin was a blue chip. And Casey Clausen was a blue chip. Like, those were all like highly, highly touted recruits that everybody wanted when they went to and they.
Those aren't overlap. Wait, those are barely overlapping.
Yeah, I know they are. They are not overlapping. I can't think of one overlapping. That's what I'm conceding.
He was a 4. Are you including him?
I'm considering T. Yeah, because both Alabama schools wanted him badly, and they were very bad when he went to Tennessee.
So that's the only overlap, right?
Yeah, you're right.
That's the difference to me right now is you got a Merklinger who comes, but there's a Nico, and then you've got the kid out of Middle Tennessee who's coming despite having a Merklinger and a Nico, and now you got Faison coming despite having all 3 of them.
Okay, what about this? Okay, here's one, and this is kind of funny to name them, but you're gonna laugh. Okay.
No, I think I know exactly who you're gonna say.
Tyler Bray, 2010.
No, I was going back further.
Okay, here we go. Tyler Bray, 2010. Justin Worley, 2011. He was a highly touted prospect, Justin Worley was. Okay. And then in 2013, I'm sorry, Nathan Peterman, 2012, another highly touted prospect. And then in 2013, Riley Ferguson and Josh Dobbs. That's the closest. This one's better. This one's better. There's nothing.
Okay, but what about? Do you remember the AJ Suggs, Tim Rattay, Casey Clausen? Did they all come in at the same time, or am I messing up my years?
AJ Suggs was a year before he redshirted. In 99, he was a redshirt in 99, so that's why Joey Matthews was the backup. Tim Rattay, I believe, was in the 2000 class, but I don't quote me on that. No, was he 99? I'm not sure, but even that, Dave, that you're right. That doesn't compete with this run.
Well, no, it doesn't. But it's kind of like your guys are the highest rated ones. My guys are the overlapping ones. But we can't come up with a time in Tennessee history that they've overlapped this highly rated.
What about Eric Ainge, Brent Schaefer, Jonathan Crompton? 04, Eric Ainge and Schaefer in 04, Crompton in 05. And then BJ Coleman, who David Cutcliffe fell in love with in 06, who was a 4-star.
But still, we're talking about just recruits. But he was a 4-star? He was a 4-star?
Yeah, he was a 4-star.
And AJ ended up, you're right, me drinker, at Georgia Tech and had a good career. So I would say that's the most comparable.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Because let's remember, by some people, Crompton was a 5-star, not as highly rated as Nico, but he was there were times where people thought he was higher rated than Peyton Manning because the rating systems weren't in place. So that's a pretty good quarterback run, but this one may be better. These are all highly. This
is the best one. There's not a close second. This is the best one.
It's insane.
But Bray, Worley, Ferguson, and Peterman, that was a pretty good run. So you had Bray in 2010, Justin Worley in 2011, Nathan Peterman in 2012, Riley Ferguson and Josh Dobbs in 2013. I mean, whatever you want to say, Tyler Bray, Josh Dobbs, and Nathan Peterman all have NFL money.
Yeah, but we're talking about recruits.
But they were all highly touted prospects, except Dobbs. Dobbs was a 3-star.
All right, so 2 minutes, and then he's been called the mouth of the South. Not really, but we could call him that, and it would probably stick. Mike Griffith will join us now with join us next with Dog Nation. I just want to check and see how the driver's education classes are going. That's pretty much all we want to talk to him about. See how that's going with the Bulldogs. And hang tight with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Talk some Georgia as camp's opening this week. It is truly football time in Tennessee. 2 minutes off Thug Sports.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare. 23 F-150 Super Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Welcome back. What's more impressive, getting several 5 stars that don't progress much or getting several 3 and 4 stars that progress at a high level? Caleb, what would you say to Mead Drinker's question that was on the message board of the show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney? Play to win, Banks and Jones. Caleb?
Getting several 3 and 4 stars that progress at a high level. I mean, that is like 1,000 times more impressive. That shows your player development. That's much more important than getting 5 stars who don't progress. If 5 stars don't progress, they're bust. I mean, you know, that 2002 class that had Brandon Jeffries and James Banks. I think Fulmer would take the class. I think Fulmer would take the class that had Arian Foster and Eric Ainge, and both of them were 3 stars. And so it's the 3 and 4 stars that progress at a high level.
All right, let's get to this day in Tennessee sports history. We're working on linking up with Mike Griffith, having a little bit of an issue with that. But this day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by our good friends at Joe Newbert Collision Center. So what do you got for me, Caleb?
It is the 20th anniversary, Dave.
Yes.
Of SEC Media Days, when a Fulmer backing out of SEC Media Days. 20 years ago today, Tennessee went to SEC Media Days in Birmingham or Hoover, Alabama, and Philip Fulmer was conspicuously absent because he was concerned about receiving a subpoena to testify in the Logan Young case.
Okay, so let's explain how this whole thing shook down for those that don't know. Hit the like and subscribe button if you like a little bit of story time going back into the day. So why would Philip Fulmer have been possibly served a subpoena?
Because, so let's go back to 2000. Alabama, under Mike DuBose, had a booster named Logan Young who had given money to a defensive lineman out of Memphis named Albert Means to go to school at Alabama, which at the time was obviously illegal NCAA-wise. Many coaches in the SEC had a problem with it. They felt Alabama's cheating was at a higher level. Steve Spurrier, by the way, submitted a complaint to the NCAA about it. Philip Fulmer went a step further, and Fulmer secretly recorded a Tresvant assistant coach acknowledging that Albert Means took money to go to Alabama, turned that over to the NCAA, and that's how Alabama got put on probation. Logan Young ended up, I believe, being criminally charged, didn't he? And
yes, well, a guy that was around that quite a bit would probably offer some insight. He's as good as they come. He covers the Georgia Bulldogs with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and Dog Nation. Mike Griffith, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Dave. And yeah, Logan Young did get indicted because money crossed state lines, so that constituted trafficking. And so the FBI was able to get involved. Of course, the NCAA does not and did not have subpoena power. But because the money crossed state lines, the FBI was able to get involved, and that's how they were able to pin that on Alabama.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Pretty good. That's a pretty good memory there. And it is funny, though, to me that Albert Means, I can't help but wonder if his career would have been better if he just hadn't gotten involved with that. What kind of distraction do you think that was for the young man?
Well, it's really no different than a lot of these guys that become, and Dave, you've covered recruiting, you know this better than anyone. A lot of these guys that get crowned 5 stars, there's junior year and commit, there's a complacency because their future is already set. So a lot of times, a lot of programs, elite programs, like to wait until later in the young man's career, even if he's committed somewhere else, because we know now commitment is just a part of the negotiation. Commitment really doesn't mean anything. I mean, really, until they sign, they're free to negotiate, and they do negotiate, whether it's for more visits or to decommit, they may get paid. But dialing it back to this situation, this was such a big situation in terms of the coaches that were involved. And this was a microcosm of what was happening everywhere. Coaches everywhere forever were part of the recruiting process. Coaches would get paid to make these players available for visits or to send them on visits. They, you know, there was always a middleman, but the structure in Memphis, you know, was I guess pretty bad. And obviously Albert Means was a key recruit. And you had some boosters from Tennessee and Alabama going back and forth. I was actually covering it on the Alabama and some of the recruiting in the 90s. And then, of course, I came to cover Tennessee. So I saw both sides of it. And, yeah, Logan Young. And then he died tragically with a mysterious fall.
Suspiciously in 2005, yes.
Well, you said that, not me. Don't know who's watching. But yeah, there was a lot of questions about that death.
Mike, I was in high school. I was born and raised in Memphis, so I was in middle school and high school when all of this was going down. And just so in case you guys are curious, Albert Means went to Memphis, and he actually wasn't academically eligible his first year to play. And then actually ended up being a very reliable player for the Tigers. He was teammates with D'Angelo Williams. That was a decent run Memphis had in the mid-2000s with those two guys.
If only the internet had existed. Not to suggest that maybe more kids get qualified because other people can take their tests via the internet, but I would say there are some questions about qualifications and academic compliance in this era of online classes.
No, true. And you never know who's watching, but, you know, Logan Young's not.
No, neither.
Here we go. What the H? I'm going to say this statement, and then Mike Griffin's going to call me crazy.
What the? What was he thinking? Release the hounds. The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
He wasn't a big Dave Hooker fan, Mike. Just to leave it at that. But
Means?
No, the other guy. All right, so let's go ahead and let me throw this at you. And I mean this because of what Tennessee has done in recruiting the past 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I believe that Kirby Smart is approachable, attainable, which I didn't necessarily think a month ago. I'm also factoring in that I think there's maybe a concern he's lost the discipline edge that he had before with the off-field issues.
Sure.
So you tell me if I'm wrong or I may be onto something, because I had him on a pedestal just 6 months ago where I'm like, this guy's going to win 5 titles.
Yeah, you know, it always seems like that. And other than Nick Saban, nobody really sustained, right? Everything's proven cyclical to some degree because what happens is the model changes, right? Like you solve it, and it works until it doesn't. And then you're reluctant to make changes, right? Now, Georgia has stayed at the forefront with their collective and their boosters with the momentum that they've had developing NFL talent. So they can approach a guy and say, all right, well, you know, maybe Tennessee's going to offer you 1.5, but come here and make 1 million because you're going to get drafted higher because you're going to practice against better players. You're going to win more games, right? Maybe that's a bad example, but a lot of we call that the Kirby effect. Now, how long can you sustain that? How long before the Texas oil money kicks in? How long before Ohio State's collection of talent and Ryan Day finally figures it out? As far as Georgia being attainable, yeah, I mean, we've seen it, Dave. I mean, I covered you know, the rise of Alabama and then the fall when you ran into Caleb remembers this if he grew up in Memphis, a lot of Bama fans there. The fall of Bama as the NCAA stuff finally caught up to them. Of course, I was at Tennessee with you, Dave, and you know we saw Coach Fulmer and anybody can win at Tennessee. Anybody can win at Tennessee, they told us, and we haven't seen Tennessee back in the SEC title game since what 2007. We saw the rise of Tennessee, and then you know, Lane Kiffin came in and left a nuclear mess of bad character players and under an NCAA investigation that went 3 years into Derek Dooley's tenure and even had sanctions that affected Butch Jones teams, believe it or not. I saw Michigan State have 3 top 10 finishes and make the college football playoff. And then they have an off the field issue that takes them down. In the Larry Nassar case, you know, spreads like a bad infection throughout their athletic department. And the thing I would say, and I've told the people at Georgia this, nobody sees it coming. Everybody thinks they've got it. Nobody. Tennessee never saw it coming. Dave, think about this, and Caleb, you too. If I would have told you in 2007, when Tennessee lost by a touchdown to eventual national champion LSU, that they would soon lose 5 out of 10 games to Vanderbilt in football, you would ask me what planet that was on. There was no way that could happen. It was impossible to think that Vanderbilt could win 5 games in 10 years against Tennessee post 2000. Impossible.
So, Mike, let me make sure I'm getting this correct. So you're predicting Georgia to lose 5 out of 7 to Vanderbilt?
well, because Vanderbilt doesn't show up to games at Georgia. They just skip it. They skipped 2 games the COVID year. No. What I'm saying, though, Dave, is that it is a precarious perch, especially now that the SEC has expanded to 16 teams. And, you know, one of the stories that, you know, for the Mark Richt people at Georgia that are so down on Mark Richt because he wasn't Kirby, I say, hey, I'll tell you what Mark Richt did do. Remember when Tennessee beat Florida in 2001 and that December game was moved back because of 9/11 and Casey Clausen and the Vols were like 16.5-point underdogs and they beat Florida and then they went on to beat the hell out of Michigan in that, what was it, the Citrus Bowl, I guess? Yeah, right. We all thought this, you know, I did. Oh, well, Spurrier's gone. It's Tennessee's time now. Yeah. It's finally, Spurrier's gone. It's going to be all Vols. And then Mark Richt and David Green and Hobnail Boot. And all of a sudden now Georgia gets to be a real pain in the butt. And it did. So just because Nick Saban's gone and Georgia has momentum, it doesn't mean it's going to continue. And Dave, you brought it up at the start of the interview. You know, these off-field issues, right, when we start talking about one guy that had a domestic violence incident or we start talking about the number of tickets or whatnot, perception, and I can tell you, covering these Georgia players, you don't go in there and go, boy, what a bunch of bad guys. Hey, I said this on radio, so I guess I'll say it now. I'd say I may not let them drive my kids to school, but I'd let them babysit my kids. I mean, they've had some off-field ticket stuff, but perception overtakes reality. And what you just said, people are going, well, does Kirby have a discipline problem? I don't think that when I interview these guys, but then you look at the traffic citations and you go, boy, there's a lot of them there. So I don't know how that affects recruiting. I'm not sure how much impact that'll have. One thing I do wonder about, and I bounce it back to you, Georgia said this at the SEC meetings, they're going to find players. They're going to get in their wallets. Is that something that other schools are going to use against Georgia now and say, hey, look, we're not going to take money from your NIL. If you have mistakes, you'll run stadium steps. You might get suspended, but we're not going to take money. I wonder if that could hurt Georgia.
So, Mike, I want to know, I want to bring up 2 programs specifically that, you know, we could say have been derailed by lack of discipline moves. And I want you to compare them for a minute. One you probably didn't cover, but you know of, and then the other one you did cover. So the one that everybody knows is historically Miami. Twice their program got derailed for discipline woes and off the field issues. And the second time they have never recovered. But you were there at Tennessee when Fulmer had the discipline issues. And I believe it was 2005 where they were number 3 in the nation heading into the year. And they had 18 off-season arrests during that time. Dave has talked about it with me because Dave covered the team too, that once you lose it, you can't get it back as a head coach. Does Kirby Smart, what's happening at Georgia right now, does that rival what was happening with Philip Fulmer and the arrest at Tennessee in 2004, 2005-ish?
Oh, man. 2 different time frames, different kinds of kids, money now. Well, money overtly involved. Money's always been involved. I thought you were going to go Urban Meyer on me there with the Florida.
That's another one, though. You're right, Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
But he ran before it fell beneath him. He bolted.
Yeah. You know, I always get drugged for this, but I always felt like the Fulmer Cup was a creation by Florida media to distract from all the stuff, the murders that were going on. I felt like the media got played by the Florida media creating this Fulmer Cup. I didn't think at the time that the Tennessee program was some outlaw program. In fact, it was just the opposite when you looked at their level of compliance. Tennessee had very strong compliance, and that's why there was no real probationary periods. They did a lot of self-reporting. They kicked a lot of guys off. There was a lot of discipline. Now, a lot of those guys were key players, and to Dave's point, I'm presuming he made this earlier, you know, they lost some real key players as a result of that discipline they were taking. So it wasn't like the coaching staff and the University of Tennessee was sitting on their hands. They were very proactive. Dave, do you remember when they even suspended T. Martin for a game because of the investigation back into his recruitment? Tennessee was very proactive and very aggressive, and that's why they didn't get hit with probation. It was the programs that would hide things that were ultimately uncovered. And, you know, I won't get into any other current coaches' names or anything like that, but the people that self-reported and that were aggressive. Look, I don't think that this is unique to Georgia any more than I thought it was unique to Tennessee, but I do think that the town and gown relationship varies from place to place. Some places, maybe you're more likely to get a warning. Some places, maybe you're more likely to get a ticket. Just like I would say some programs are more compliant, more likely to self-report than other programs are. I don't think that the discipline, ultimately, in closing here, my argument, I don't think the discipline brought down Phillip Fulmer as much as I felt like the recruiting brought down Phillip Fulmer. And I thought that that was an extension of the Linda Bensel-Myers investigation. And all of a sudden now Tennessee couldn't recruit the same sorts of players that they were before, if that makes any sense to you.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I'm interested to see what happens moving forward with Kirby Smart. And do you believe, if you had to bet a week's paycheck of that magnificent paycheck that comes in as us journalists, I mean, it's like a lottery ticket every week. Has Kirby Smart lost some of the grip on this team, or is everything as good as it was last year, the year before?
You know, Kirby's going to Kirby. What I do wonder is I wonder about the leadership within the team, you know, and I think we've seen this with other great programs. When I think about the best Georgia teams, I think about 2021 Georgia. I think that was the best one of them all. I think they were better than 2022, which I think was better than 2023. And sometimes when players come into a program where there's a strong leadership group, I think back to Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis specifically, there's a bit of a vacuum. When those players move on, the young players that come in aren't as likely to lead because they've been led. And so my question for Georgia, or for any championship program, and I almost said Al Wilson this morning, but I realized a lot of people in Athens, probably outside of Quincy Carter, who about got his head torn off in '98, probably wouldn't remember Al. But every team, every great team has, and I think I can say this on your show, has got this ass-kicking guy that holds everybody accountable. And that was Al Wilson. And for the Tennessee people watching, maybe some of them know, maybe some of them just know he was a great player. But what Al Wilson really did was in the locker room. And you didn't just have to answer to Coach Fulmer or Dan Brooks or John Chavis. You had to answer to Al Wilson. And when you've got internal leadership like that, that player, that self-led team, all these coaches, oh, we're a self-led team, we're BS. You know, what are you going to do? Not let you play video games tonight? Listen, Al Wilson would put you in the wash machine, man. I mean, there was going to be some accountability if you didn't follow your assignment or if you got in trouble off the field. And I don't know that Georgia has that. We've heard Kirby talk a lot about Carson Beck being more assertive, right? And I'm not talking about buying the next diamond watch or the next, you know, golf shot he's going to show you on his Instagram. I'm talking about holding receivers, holding players accountable. Is he that type of quarterback? Do they got that guy? Do they have that Al Wilson on defense, that Jordan Davis figure, that Javon Bullard figure that's going to say, everybody get your heads out of your asses, we got to get this done? Or is everybody just too nice? So that's what my question is about Georgia, is the internal leadership and the players' ability to hold one another accountable. To me, that's the winning edge now in college football.
Yep, I agree with that. And who did you say was on the front of that, or who did you say was at the front of that leadership? Because it also happens to be on the front of a book. Go ahead and work that in.
Oh boy, we're talking about Al Wilson here. Did you?
Yeah, so you can click right there. See, you just gave me a plug.
Hey, read it. Let me tell you, the guy was an absolute legend. It was a joy to cover him. I'll tell a quick story, Dave, just because I know you got some Tennessee folks watching. We were with Al Wilson at the start of the '98 season, and I was asking him about all the stars on the team that were retired. He said, well, first of all, we ain't got no stars. Ain't got no stars on this team, baby. You write that. No stars. I said, but what about Jamal Lewis? He goes, man, let me tell you something. If I was still playing running back, you wouldn't even know who Jamal Lewis is right now. So I was like, oh, man, this is good. I'm going to go wait till I tell Jamal Lewis this. So, hey, hey, Jamal, hey, man, Al Wilson, what did he say to me? I said, hey, he said if he was playing running back, we wouldn't even know who you are. And Jamal's like, yeah, you're probably right. I'm like, well, okay, you got Jamal Lewis backing down. That's when I'm like, all right, this 27 guy, this guy's cut a little bit different than Jamal Lewis, who is a scary guy. Like, a scary guy. And I don't mean that like in a bad way. I just mean like you looked at him, you say, this guy could really kill me if he wanted to. And he ran the ball like that too. But he was like, everybody deferred. What did Neil Johnson say? If Al Wilson hits your mom, You'd ask your mom what you did to deserve it. I mean, that was his anecdote. That's probably not politically correct. But it probably wasn't politically correct then either. But it made the point that Al was revered to that extent.
She needs to straighten up a little bit. All right. You can order Celebrate 98 the book. Anything else from you, Caleb?
Yeah, I just want to ask quickly, because like I hear this story all the time about like, leadership and, player leadership comes through. But like, is it me or it felt like with Nick Saban, the whole dynasty run at Alabama, there weren't like player leaders during that? Wasn't it always just Nick Saban leading the team the whole time, running a tight ship?
I heard a lot about what was that, Ashawn, that defensive tackle. I think that, and I think Saban's leadership style in general. I mean, everybody was on pins and needles. Like, this could be your last year here on the planet, much less on the coaching staff. I mean, a miserable guy to work for, an impossible place to have any sort of extended tenure unless you're Nick Saban. But it's such a collection of talent, Caleb. It really, and I'm not saying that Nick Saban, had to have the most talent to win, although hadn't won a title since 2020. But when he had that level of talent, it's kind of hard to lose, right? I mean, and that edge and that level of competition that they had on the Alabama teams, and then the way Nick coached. And then all of a sudden, what year? It was 2021. Remember, he'd be pulling his headsets up, throwing his hair. And I remember talking to Bryce Young's dad. Like, he's a psychiatrist, right? And so Bryce Young was like this super cerebral, like, hey, coach, if you yell at me, I'm not going to play any harder. And you could just see how Saban was trying to adjust. Like, he wants to scream and yell, but this doesn't help. And his dad told me, Craig Young told me, he can yell at Bryce all he wants, but coach, it's not going to make him play any better. Well, now what does Saban do? He pulls his hair out and retires 4 years later without a title. He gets run out of the national title by the same school that ran him out of the Big Ten. That's why he's coming back to coach again someday. That's for another show.
All right, good stuff. Mike, we'll talk to you soon. How do we follow your work?
DogNation.com. We have a Dog Nation YouTube channel. We have a Dog Nation Facebook channel. And I heard a rumor that we might just get Dave Hooker on later. So this thing ain't quite over yet.
And there you go. We'll do that. Mike, I appreciate you, buddy.
All right, man. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
A great job. And he is covered. It seems like everywhere he goes, somebody wins a championship.
No, that's true.
It happened at Tennessee. He was at Michigan State for a while. Did they win a basketball one while he was there?
2000? No, I think 2000 when they won it with Tom Izzo.
And you can text me. I think he's sitting there listening. But also, he was there when they won one at Alabama, Tennessee. So a lot going on. All right.
Do you think?
Yes.
Just a quick question.
I do think all the time. You should try it. Do
you think what hurt one of the? Do you think? Well played. Do you think one of the reasons some of the discipline hurt Fulmer in the 2000s, though? Do you think do you think because Georgia came along with Mark Richt and was starting to get talent, do you think he was not allowed to be as selective about the character guys he recruited at that point? Because
I think any coach is going to err on the side of talent over character.
But in the 90s, he could be selective with that, right? Because he had his pick of the litter because Georgia was down in Alabama.
Yeah, but I don't think we think Jamal Lewis was a choir boy by the same token, though.
No, we don't. I mean, he would not have made the concessions you say he made for James Banks, though. He would never made those for Jamal Lewis, I feel like.
By the time James Banks came along, I think there were a lot of concessions being made that should have never been made. Apex Apparel Group Design, 15% off your first order. All you got to do is call Tyler right down below at 865-919-3001, 865-919-3001, whether it's spiritware, whether it's promotional products for your company. They've got you all taken care of. We certainly appreciate them. Don't forget 15% off of your first order right down below. Stay tuned. In exactly 2 minutes, why Joe Milton might prove everybody wrong, the top 5 seniors for the 2024 class. And also, we're going to visit with Joe Milton to talk about, we're going to visit with T. Scott Jones to visit about the very serious Georgia arrest and why I'm going to continue. I think that the Kirby Smart regime has hit its peak. I think there is more competition right now, particularly with the Texas, but Oklahoma might be good. I think Josh Heupel is going to provide more competition because that program's getting better. I believe after this weekend of recruiting that Kirby Smart is not only approachable but beatable. We'll discuss more about that, including Joe Milton performing really well at the Pats camp. Stay tuned. He is Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Couple of recruiting notes. Most of you know I've covered recruiting for more years than I can care to count. Bender of Strings said, without question, the biggest recruiting miss by Fulmer was Cadillac Williams. Well, sometimes you got to give your opponent a lot of credit for just cheating, because Auburn took in every assistant coach, which was an NCAA violation, and sat in his living room. And Cadillac Williams said, wow, I feel wanted because everybody I've ever seen from Auburn is here. So that's exactly what happened there. Sometimes you got to tip your cat to the other guy. Trevor also says pressure is on Kirby. There's no doubt. Dave, don't you think this year is for Tennessee's trajectory for Josh? I didn't think that 3 days ago and 3 weeks ago. I now believe the trajectory for Tennessee's, and I've said this before in the program before we get to the stat of the day, I believe the trajectory could lead to a dynasty, not just a one-year run for a title, Caleb. And those are two very separate things.
No, I mean, I'm with you on this. You guys think I'm crazy. When I talk about like Tennessee's recruiting extremely well, I don't know why people are like upset with the idea that I say they're doing it because of NIL. Who cares why you're doing it? You're doing it. I mean, that's like when, like back in the day when people are like, I watched an old documentary one time on LBJ when he became president after JFK's assassination. And before he got reelected, he's like, they're not really going to consider me a president. They're going to consider me an accidental president. I'm like, who cares? You still go in the history books as a president of the United States. By hook or crook, you got there. So,
true. Who will have the highest rated signing class right now? Alabama still leads with 39% of the vote. Georgia, 38% of the vote. Tennessee, 23%. They're listed 3, 4, 5 in the current rankings. That could be the stat of the day, but we'll go in a different direction. Caleb, what do you got?
Stat of the day?
Stat of the day.
All right. Let's go ahead and pull this up real quick. I'm going to go with a guy we are all familiar with, a guy named Casey Clausen.
I will love Casey Clausen's stat of the day. I'm going to tell you real quick. It's brought to you by Quality Tire Pro. The Everly family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. All work covered by nationwide warranty. Downtown on Cherokee in Chattanooga, QualityTirePros.com, QualityTirePros.com. Tell Bo that Off the Hook Sports said hello. All right. What's Casey Clausen's stat of the day?
Well, I was just thinking, it's July, which is the 7th month of the year, and Clausen wore number 7. In 2000, Casey Clausen became the first true freshman in Tennessee history to throw 5 touchdowns in a game. Want to know who did it against, Dave? You were probably covering the game.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can name that. 5 touchdowns against an opponent. His first
freshman.
As a true freshman, his first start was Alabama, so it would be the second half of the season. I'm going to say that it's probably a non-conference opponent. I can't remember, but I'll go Kentucky.
Well, Kentucky would not be non-conference, so you would have been doubly
right.
wrong.
I'm saying I think I'm going to miss it on a non-conference opponent, but I'm going to go Kentucky because I can't remember who they played non-conference that year.
Kentucky's not a bad pick because it felt like year after year quarterbacks threw for tons of touchdowns, but it actually was the week before Arkansas. Tennessee won 63-20 in that game. They jumped out to a 35-0 first quarter lead.
Wow. Okay. That game, I don't really remember that game very much, but that's the game where, wasn't it the next season where Arkansas got their revenge? College game day was in Fayetteville for the first time.
It was the year after that. Arkansas got their revenge in 99 where they beat Tennessee 28-24. And then because made up for the stumble and fumble. 2000, Tennessee got revenge on Arkansas for the 99 game and absolutely beat the brakes off them 63-20.
Okay. All right. So tell me what Joe Milton is doing at the Pats camp, because I'm happy for this young man.
Guys, Joe Milton is reportedly balling at the Pats camp to the point that the Boston Globe training camp observations say Joe Milton, not Drake May, their top 5 pick, is the wow quarterback. Yes, that's right. They're higher on Joe Milton at the Globe right now. Drake May in an 11-on-11 threw a pick 6, and Joe Milton threw a ball to Javon Maker that might have hit the, quote unquote, according to Griffin De La Pena, might have hit the moon for a touchdown. And also, Joe Milton threw a pass that people say looked like it hit a cloud because it actually threw a pass so high it went above a cloud and then came down. I don't know why that helps you in the NFL because you're not trying to hit clouds, but that's what the Patriots fans are in love with.
You sound like you don't think that Joe Milton can be a great pro. I'm going to ask this question on the YouTube page right now. It's our poll question. Joe Milton will be blank: a great pro, a good pro, a washout. 50% say a good pro, 17% say a great pro, washout 33%. I think he's going to be a great pro. And by great, I mean, let's take this on a curve a little bit. He's going to be a starter. He's going to have a, what's the guy who, you like that, who's bounced around. Yeah, he'll have a Kirk Cousins type of career. To me, for him, that's a great career.
First of all, Kirk Cousins is the most underrated quarterback of the last 10 years. He's been a better quarterback than Tom Brady the last 10 years. Look it up. Look up the numbers. Okay.
Sure, but anyway, go ahead.
Yes. Anyways, Joe Milton also wowed everybody with the backflip at there. So they're in love with his athleticism. They're in love with his arm strength, and he's outperforming Drake May at camp. I'm going to go good pro career. I think Joe Milton might get a start or two in the NFL. And I think here's what's going to happen. This is the honest truth. What's going to happen, Dave. I tell you guys this all the time. Quarterbacks with athleticism and big arms are like the toxic girl at the bar. Everything in you as a scout says you shouldn't take this person, but you just can't resist it. And so somebody won't be able to resist him, and they're going to give him every chance to succeed, but it's not going to work because Joe Milton is just not accurate enough. So he will be a starter for like a year maybe, but it'll be a career backup because people are going to be in love with that arm. Now, I'll say this. For Joe Milton, typically big arm flameouts that I know of, Dave. I think Ryan Leaf. I think Jamarcus Russell. Fred White's on our show, and he's very defensive of Ryan Leaf. He thinks Ryan Leaf was kind of set up to fail being in the Chargers organization. There's a reason Eli Manning didn't want to go there. But either way, Ryan Leaf was very thin-skinned, didn't handle it well. Vince Young, another one, big arm. The big arm quarterbacks that are flops all seem like they had mental issues that they couldn't get through. There's no sign that Joe Milton has that whatsoever. He doesn't seem like he doesn't seem like he's thin-skinned, and he doesn't seem like he's lazy. I'll give him that.
No, I agree. One of Hooker's hangouts. Treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family recipes. 5 locations to choose from right down below. AsiaCafe.org, AsiaCafe.org. One of Hooker's hangouts. You can see me there. Absolutely loved it. Caleb, my issue with Joe Milton is something that maybe Tennessee fans don't want to hear. But I believe that he got motivated as NIL became a thing, and he realized there was money out there. The money that he made at Tennessee, let's say it's $1 million a year. Let's say he made $1 million at Tennessee. I don't know that, but that sounds about right for a starting quarterback in the SEC. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's all right.
Okay. That money's going to run out, and then that first NFL check's going to run out. And I think that he is motivated by material goods, and I think he'll do well in the NFL. There's something to be said for being motivated in that regard. And I don't mean it to sound like a mean thing or a criticism. It's not. If you're motivated by material goods, that's great. Some people are, some people aren't. I think he is, and I think that he will be. I think that will benefit him and make him a better quarterback, because he'll realize that this little seed of $1 million can turn into a tree of tens of millions of dollars.
So what you're saying, Dave, let me be clear on this. What you're saying is it's a year 3 in the NFL, year 4, it's a contract year for Joe Milton. All of a sudden, he's going to play at a level we have never seen him to play before. He's going to play so well. Then he'll get his big contract, and then he's going to completely falter off because he's already got the material needs that he got.
I wasn't going to go there, but if you want to go there, you can.
I'm just no. Again,
you're going is you're taking the poor guy and just tearing him apart.
That sounds like you're saying he's waiting till he gets that Jordan Love contract. You guys saw Jordan Love. I think is now making $55 million a year for the Packers, and you're saying he's waiting until he gets that, and then he's like, "Peace, I'm out, got my money," and that sounds like that's what you're saying, Dave.
Quarterbacks want 2 contracts though, so I don't think he'll do that.
Okay, maybe that's true. I'll say this for Joe. I think it's very possible. I think one of the other reasons he may be better in the NFL, I think it's very possible he was, to a degree, in something you told me about Jamal Lewis back in the day, may have been protecting himself for the NFL last year. We lamented his refusal to run when it was there. Honestly, if Joe Milton was just more willing to run, don't you think Tennessee's offense could have been close to what it was under Hendon Hooker in 2022? Maybe not as good, but close.
Closer.
Yeah. What if he was not willing to run because he didn't want to get hit and injured for the NFL? I mean, we're talking about a guy that just in practice the other day did a backflip. Nothing puts you more at risk for injury than a backflip, okay? Like, you could land wrong and break your leg. You know this, Dave. Tony Allen with the Celtics, remember that? Did some, like, unimportant dead ball dunk to show off for the crowd and broke his leg and missed the whole year for it. Like, you don't want to do a backflip just to do a backflip unless you're trying to let the scouts see that you are athletic.
I don't think you want to do a backflip no matter what, to be real honest with you. But yeah, the thing about Joe Milton is he has to be, and you could say this about every quarterback. If they fell into the right system, who would be a better quarterback, Hendon Hooker or Joe Milton?
I'm still going Hendon Hooker.
Okay, I would go Hendon Hooker, but probably not by nearly as much if he fell in the perfect system. I use the perfect system when I say this: protect the quarterback. In a different way, Tom Brady was protected when they won a Super Bowl his first year as a full-time starter when he took over Drew Bledsoe. I'm sorry, his name escapes me. Jalen Hurts was protected in some ways with the way on what they ran, a lot of play action to keep him out of harm's way. So I think you could do that with Joe Milton as he got more comfortable. Maybe I'm falling in love with his talent, just like Josh Heupel did. But there's just too much talent there for me to think that given if I'm a coach 2 years, I can't build that into something. And if you get him to believe a little bit, because he's still got some doubt. I mean, look at his career. There have been plenty of times where he's had bad news. You're not the starter. You need a transfer. You're not the starter again. He's probably got some doubt. Get that doubt out of there, and I think he can grow into a great quarterback.
I'm having a hard time with it. And it's, again, I want to be clear on this because I'm very sensitive to when we talk about quarterbacks, particularly African-American quarterbacks this way, because there is obviously stigma. I don't think Joe Milton's not smart. I think he's a very smart person. You interviewed him last year. I met him at SEC Media Days. He's a very intelligent person, guys. I don't think he thinks quickly on his feet.
Football processing and intelligence is two completely different things.
Yeah, exactly. There can be people who are really dumb that process football well, honestly, that think quickly on their feet. Joe Milton, like, Joe Milton's a guy.
Brett Favre.
That's true. Brett Favre was the best one. Joe Milton's a guy that I could actually trust, like, if he chose to go to school for engineering to build a ship for NASA, like the way Josh Dobbs did, he might be able to do that. But I don't know if he can, and he could probably study film well. But does he react? Reflexes are a different thing. Football is almost a reflex game, and it's just not there with Joe.
The show represented by Banks and Jones. You got to believe, and I hope he believes more than Caleb. Tennessee with the top 5 seniors for the 2024 class who will lead the Vols to whatever season they get led to as Tennessee opens camp on Wednesday, and they will have a media day on Tuesday. Also, T. Scott Jones to join us a little bit later, talk about the very serious arrest in Athens. Stay tuned because I'm going to be back with you to tell you about those seniors in just about 60 seconds. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. All right, Caleb, what do you got for me? The top 5 seniors for the 2024 class. This is a veteran group. There's no question about that. It's brought to you by our good friends at Work Trucks. All about trucks. Right truck, right place, right time. Work Trucks, LLC. That's Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Go. Caleb, what do you got?
Yeah, so the reason for the hype behind Tennessee this year is obviously Nico Iamaleava stepping in at quarterback. Josh Heupel bringing in a wave of transfers to fill the voids that he's had, particularly in the secondary. Players getting healthy, and so many players who could have been gone after this year, who either Dave chose to come back for one final year of eligibility or was able to get a medical redshirt. That's a hint on who's on this list. We start with number 5, a guy who could have left. Javonte Spraggins. Now, Dave, I was down to 2 other senior offensive linemen on here because it's Javonte Spraggins, Andre Carrick, and John Campbell Jr. are all seniors who are going to start on the line. So for me, it was down to really Spraggins and Campbell. I got Spraggins above Campbell. I just think the interior blocking is so important and he's more proven. I don't know how you feel about Campbell versus Spraggins.
I'm generally going to take a tackle over a guard because I think it's a more difficult position to play. So I'll go Campbell, but just slightly because I think Spraggins is a better player.
Okay, fair enough. I think in this offense, the guard's actually more important because you need the vertical rushing attack, and you don't get that without that right guard.
I think the skill set is tougher to find in recruiting of a big guy that can move his feet that well. Not which is more important necessarily, but which is more difficult to find.
Fair enough. Tackle's more raw talent. Tackle's actually an easier position to scout for, though, isn't it? Even though it's harder to find.
Yes.
Yeah. Number 4. There are 2 seniors in the receiving core this year, and both had season-ending injuries last year, Brew McCoy and Dante Thornton, but Brew McCoy is going to be the main receiver. That's an easy one.
I got no argument with that. You're going to struggle to get 3 more that are more important than those 3. I've got 1. Then Brew. Excuse me. Who's number 3?
Well, you can call me out on this, but number 3, I got the guy, the leader of the defense that went to SEC Media Days, and I'm talking about Amari Thomas. And now there's a ton.
You can't have him over Brew.
Why?
Because they've got other proven defensive tackles.
Tennessee's got other proven receivers. And Brew wasn't even healthy last year.
Not that
I'm just
proven.
saying. Okay, but here's the thing. Tennessee it was difficult because Tennessee is loaded at defensive tackle. Omar Norman-Lott, Bryson Eason, Elijah Simmons, and Dominic Bailey are all senior defensive linemen, but Amari Thomas has held on to that starting job, and he's a defensive tackle who went to SEC Media Days twice. That says something.
Okay. All right. I think that's a little high, given their depth at defensive tackle, but go right ahead.
All right. Number 2, another SEC Media Day attendee, played 1 game for Tennessee so far this year, but he got it in his career, but he got a medical redshirt. Keenan Peely.
That's crazy.
You can't have him up there that high. He's only played 1 game.
You suck, jackass.
No, I can and I will. Keenan Peely is going to be, he would have been a weapon last year. And you saw how much Tennessee struggled in their horizontal run game defense last year. That was the biggest part. Was, Dave, you remember this. The misdirection run plays torched Tennessee last year. Now, we talk about Missouri all the time and how Missouri changed up their defense for 1 game, and that's why the offense struggled. I think we lose sight of the fact that, do you not remember how bad the Tennessee defense struggled with Missouri's misdirection horizontal running plays throughout the day? Because of the fact that they didn't have a middle linebacker that was quick enough, that didn't have enough lateral quickness?
Yes.
Maybe with Keenan Peely, they still beat Missouri, even though they lost 36-7. Just saying, I think maybe with Keenan Peely, they beat Florida, even without Cooper Mays. That first half doesn't happen if Keenan Peely's in there. So I think Keenan Peely is huge for them.
All right. Who is we're down to 2 seniors?
No, now we're at number 1.
Okay, don't give that away. It's brought to you by Work Trucks. They're all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down. It has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips than trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is quick and easy. Choosing a vehicle. Work Trucks, they are utility body trucks with napod work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes. They've got cranes, dump trucks. Work Trucks supplies vehicles to people just like you and get you back on the road. No dealership run around. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks, and that's a fact. Service industry, Work Trucks with an X. Work Trucks, Clinton Highway in Knoxville, Birmingham, downtown. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. While risk chancing your future in business, the wrong piece of equipment. Work Trucks, LLC.com. The trucks you have to have. All right, who's number 1?
Obviously, number 1 is Matthew Solansky, the long snapper. No, I'm joking, but he is actually a very good long snapper, and he's an underrated long snapper. Long snapper is the most underrated position in football, guys. Morgan Cox is a 12-year NFL veteran for Tennessee as a Pro Bowler, so don't sleep on good long snappers. But number 1 is another guy that does snap the ball, but just not on special teams, and his name is Cooper Mays. And there is absolutely no debate that he's the most important senior on the team.
Has to be. Don't even think it's close. A new video up with Cooper Mays, visiting with him about the beginning of preseason camp. The thing that's amazing, I think, about Cooper Mays is, really he was considered, I think, just kind of a tag along with his older brother in recruiting. I think he felt that a little bit. And I think that he wondered if people were recruiting him or they were recruiting him and his brother. Cooper didn't have fantastic size either. So for him to be one of the leaders and the most important as we see it, I mean, seniors, you could argue players, Caleb, says a lot for what he's been able to do and what he's been able to develop into.
I was covering Tennessee when he committed with Jeremy Pruitt in 2019. Cooper commits, and we were all like, "Oh, impressive!" Cooper Mays is going to Tennessee. Cade Mays, his younger brother, he was less highly touted. He was a 4-star. A year later, going into the 2020 season, Cade Mays transfers from Georgia to Tennessee, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, this is a huge get!" Tennessee gets Cade Mays back in Knoxville. That was an underrated. Cooper Mays already started playing center for Tennessee in 2020 as a freshman for a while. You had Cooper Mays, Cade Mays, Trey Smith. I'm missing somebody else, but Wanye Morris, who ended up just going to the NFL. Darnell Wright. I just named an NFL offensive line, didn't I, Dave?
Yes. I'm curious. We mentioned Cooper Mays. The other player you mentioned in your list of top 5 most significant seniors is Keenan Pili as well. We just automatically say Tennessee beats Florida with Cooper Mays, right?
Oh, easily.
I mean, we just that's just a given. But we don't say Tennessee beats Alabama with Keenan Pili. Let's remember they were in pretty good shape, and he's going to be a physical run stopper who against Jalen Milroe, who decided he wanted to run the second half. That could have definitely changed the feel of that game because Tennessee did not have a middle linebacker.
This is you guys know that I don't think Tennessee was as close with Alabama as many people do from this past year. I think Alabama just waited to turn it on. But Dave, you kind of have a point, because even though Alabama did wait to turn it on, if they'd waited to turn it on when Keenan Pili was out there, they may not have been able to turn it on. Because it would have been, because at that point they're in obvious passing downs. Tennessee kind of knows their situation, and Keenan Pili gives Tim Banks a lot more flexibility to do what he needs to do defensively. Now there was the issue that, and I said this for a while, the problem with the Alabama game was Tennessee could not run the ball, and it wasn't because of schematics or anything like that. They just weren't good enough to run the ball on Alabama that day. But you do make a good point about that. Look, if Keenan Pili's there, Dave, they may beat Florida. Forget Cooper Mays. If Keenan Pili's there and Cooper Mays is not there, not forget Cooper Mays, but if Keenan Pili's there and Cooper Mays is not on the team, they still may beat Florida that last year. I mean, he was very, very that important. Quick couple, wanted to get your thoughts on 3 other seniors I wanted to shout out real quick. Miles Kitselman, do you think he makes an impact at tight end?
Soft, no. I don't feel strongly about it. I'll know more in a couple of days.
And then on the offensive line, Jackson Lampley and Dane Davis, they're both rotational guys, right? They'll probably play snaps, even if they're not like regular starters.
Yeah. And I mean, chances are you're going to need Dane Davis at some point because he's kind of like the utility guy, and you never get through a season without an injury to the offensive line. So, no, I think that Dane Davis is a good utility player. You'd rather have just a second-string offensive line, but having a Dane Davis is very important. I'll tell you more in 15 seconds.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
No, I think Dane Davis is a big fit, and we don't talk about the one guy who I think is incredibly important, and that could be that is, I believe, Andre Keurig. Does he take that next step? Is he good at left guard? Because it's kind of feels like we've assumed him into a starting position. We've assumed him into a star position, and so far he's barely achieved the former and has not achieved the latter. He's nowhere close to being a star.
No, he's not. He was a massive underachiever last year. And if he went to Tennessee for NIL money, I was hard on Dante Thornton early last year, but then I find out injuries that I didn't know he had. So now my ire has been directed at Andre Keurig. If depending on how much he was paid to leave Texas to go to Tennessee, he stole that money. He should give it back. I'm just going to say that. As of right now, he stole money to play for Tennessee in 2023. He stole money, Jamarcus Russell level style, stealing money from the Raiders.
Well, based off their actions, I would disagree with you there because they're keeping him around. So if you're paying somebody, you can boot him pretty easily.
Maybe they don't want to. or it's hard to psychologically cut bait with an investment you paid for, Dave. You want to make your investment work.
It depends what I'm signed for. All right. This Georgia player has gotten arrested for something very serious. Also, did we get to the stat of the day? Yeah, we
did.
All right. Hang tight. 2 minutes with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare. 23 F-150 Super Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, BanksJones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Well, we are joined by a very special guest as we get some insight to what's becoming an ongoing issue, and that is players getting in trouble at the University of Georgia. And had some fun with an incident, off-field incident last week, but this one's a little bit more serious. As Georgia wide receiver Rara Thomas is facing multiple felonies, has been suspended by his team after he was arrested early Friday morning in Athens. 3 counts of second-degree cruelty to children and 3 counts of family violence battery. He was booked at 3:20 a.m. So we're joined by T. Scott Jones of Banks & Jones, who's nice enough to provide us a little bit of insight. And T. Scott, thank you, sir. We appreciate it. How are you?
Oh, splendid. I'll tell you what, good Monday morning, trying to dry out here. We've had our share of rain, but I guess into every life, a little bit of rain's got to fall. Evidently, It fell pretty hard in Mr. Thomas's life.
It did. If you want to come swim in my front yard, we've got some flooding issues that I'll tell you about another time. But I'm looking at Mr. Thomas, the Georgia wide receiver, and he's suspended indefinitely. These are the type of, when you start talking about cruelty to children and 3 counts of family violence, battery, I would imagine these are the type of charges that are taken very seriously by the courts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we have family violence centers and, places where children and mothers and fathers, for that matter, that are victims of family violence can go for relief. And I guess probably what's most disturbing, and it appears, why Georgia has been forced to take such affirmative action relative to this gentleman, is the fact that it's not his first bite out of the apple. So I was looking a little bit online when I first saw it come up, and he appears to have had effectively a judicial diversion program a year or so ago. I'm sort of glancing over here at my other screen where it reports that, he was charged with false imprisonment and a misdemeanor count of family violence battery. And of course, when we talk about battery is the actual physical striking. So, when you have that type situation and then you have a set of circumstances in which you have these multiple counts of, cruelty to children, I mean, it's just one of those things nobody can kind of look askance at. I mean, you've got to kind of take that one head on. It's some dangerous stuff.
T. Scott Jones, yeah, I wanted looking at that and his past behavior. How we know what we can talk about what Georgia should do because this. You're right. It's the second bite at the apple. As far as the courts go, does it matter whether or not charges like that were dropped or he pled out for misdemeanors or things like that, or will a judge look at that and maybe be a little less lenient because it's like, you've had this happen to you before and you haven't really shown any remorse or willingness to get better over it? How much can that be used against them?
From a judicial standpoint and a prosecutorial standpoint, having, defended literally thousands of folks, when you sort of have that one bite out of the apple, we're all human, we all make mistakes, but when you've had that one bite out of the apple and then you go back for seconds, I mean, judges don't like it, prosecutors don't like it, and it's much more difficult. The explanation or the excuse that you have, it begins to fall on deaf ears. And albeit you can be the greatest football hero in the world, but if you can't keep your personal life in check and in order, then you're never going to hear the cheers again. I mean, that's reality. And I mean, it is a harsh set of circumstances. I mean, he certainly enjoys the privilege, and just like we all do, of being innocent until proven guilty, but it does not look good from that situation that he's facing.
Judges go back and forth to the courtroom just like anybody else. They hear about what's going on in pop culture, and obviously Georgia football is big pop culture there in Athens. I'm curious, the judges have to hear that they've had these traffic issues. The judges, though, however, could be Georgia fans. What is more likely in a southern city, that you get preferential treatment for an athlete, or in this particular case, you get hey, we're going to come down on you because you got a lot going for you type of judge? Or is it just random?
I think it's sort of random, but I think it's a balancing act. I mean, when you come in there the first time, I think you get the benefit of the doubt. Obviously we want to see you on Saturday. We want to see you, take care of business for the Mighty Bulldogs. But that being said, at some point in time, you just can't accept this type of behavior. And not that it's ever been acceptable. The reality of it is in today's climate, I mean, it's a non-starter. I mean, it is just absolutely a death knell. And so judges, albeit they may have some sort of an affinity for a university and a program and their athletes, they're elected by the population. And the population's just not going to tolerate this. When you talk about cruelty to children, you talk about false imprisonment, you talk about things of that nature, those are just non-starters. I mean, we're all taught the basic principles of keep our hands to ourselves, behave ourselves from just a young age on. And, if you can't manifest those principles in your everyday life, then bad things are going to happen. And in this situation, I think you're going to have, when you have that scrutiny focused on a judge relative to it, and you're going to have victims groups and advocates that are there, they're going to be looking at it. And sometimes when that light is shined brightest on a judge, I mean, then the judge is going to basically do absolutely perfect dead letter what the law requires him to do. So sometimes in a circumstance like this, rah-rah is not going to get that preferential treatment. He's probably going to get treated a little bit harsher than basically anyone else because of the nature of it. I think, we look at this as far as, holding folks that are athletes to a higher standard. I think, it's not even a higher standard. It's just the same standards that you, me, or Caleb, we all would be held to with regards to our conduct, both with those that we love or that we interact with. So I'd be interested to see how this plays out.
Yeah, on a national scale, T. Scott Jones, what kind of makes me think, because you talked about the second bite of the apple, we're a lot, as a society, just less lenient. It falls on deaf ears, your excuses at that point, the second bite of the apple. The first thing that came to my mind was the sentencing OJ got for stealing his own stuff, which seemed harsh to a lot of people, but many of us were like, yeah, but you got off for double murder, so why were you stupid enough to go commit another crime when you got the luckiest draw in the world?
You dodged a major bullet. You ought to be not only living at the foot of the cross, you ought to have both arms around it at all times. And, it looks like sort of a pattern of conduct, and I guess, we've all heard this about our beloved university, the University of Tennessee, God's University, as I refer to it. We hear this going on down at Georgia. I mean, it just posits that question. I mean, Kirby got a lack of institutional control. I mean, those are the harsh words nobody wants to hear, but you either get your athletes in line or, bad things are going to happen. And I mean, is this indicative of a larger problem? Because they talked about all these speeding tickets and other things. I mean, just because you're an athlete does not excuse you from meeting the regular standards of conduct.
Great stuff. T. Scott Jones, we appreciate it. BanksandJones.com. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Yeah, I will tell you, Caleb, the more I hear about that OJ guy, the more I just don't like him.
I mean, I'm sorry. That was always the thing.
He's just not a likable fella.
I remember people trying to say that sentence was only so harsh because of the 94 case. I'm like, yeah, well, that's his fault. Why would you?
Yeah, well, it had all kinds of correlations between the birthdays of the victims. I mean, it was overtly, I don't know if you know that, the judge, the days were their ages and that sort of thing. Did you know all that?
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, so every number she gives out where she hammers him, it's not just a random number. It actually means something, which that is totally taking your power outside of what it's supposed to be. But if
you have if you're within the legal realms to do it,
it's OJ, and I'm completely okay with that.
Yeah. It's so looking at it when you were at Tennessee, you obviously, we talk about the arrest reform and things like that. Was there ever a serious one that you covered where it was you had to question, I don't think this guy should stay on the team, because you thought that this guy should maybe, you watched him and you were like, he's going to be in handcuffs in a year or so?
Yes. There were a few. But there were also a few that I thought that, and they ended up being stand-up citizens. I can remember one young man coming from Compton, and Philip Fulmer said that, hey, I had to get him off the streets at Compton. So he got him on campus early before he was supposed to enroll. But that guy ended up being a stand-up guy and a very good football player for Tennessee. Not incredible, but very good. And Philip Fulmer was right, so he helped somebody. So the notion that it's always just about him and getting better and get the football team better is a little too simplistic. There are times when, had that guy stayed at Compton for a couple more weeks, maybe he would have gotten in trouble and never got to UT and never played for a few years in the NFL.
Well, that's the Saban argument that we've all heard him say. What was it? He did that rant, and it was a great rant when, the tough disciplines of college football fans are like, kick him off the team. He broke a team rule, kick him off. It seems like, where do you want the kid to be? What do you want as a society? Do you want him just, okay, now you want to throw away his future? What, do you just want him in the street, having to figure out a way to commit a crime? Or do you want him graduating, maybe bettering himself and becoming a contributing member of society?
That, and what would bother you more? See, I'm fine with going back to the Steve Spurrier. His rules were really simple. If you hit a woman, you weren't on the team, right?
Right.
And he said that publicly. That's a fact. And the other rule he had is that he would suspend people for meaningless games early in the season. He wasn't worried about fining them because fines weren't a thing back then and NIL wasn't a thing. But for minor issues, I'm okay with suspending somebody for a meaningless game. You still want to go out there and play well. And with Tennessee's offense, are you telling me a receiver wouldn't just absolutely hate sitting out a game? If one of the starting receivers did something wrong and they had to sit out a game, that would be awful. You want to go out there and star. That's what you do all the work for.
Well, yeah, and it's also, for most people, not everybody, but for most people, even if they have discipline issues, it's embarrassing to be suspended, isn't it? Even if it's a meaningless game, it's embarrassing to say you were suspended for a game.
Well, I would hope so. I would hope so.
Yeah, and you're right. Spurrier did do. He admitted, though, he said, I got kind of lucky because I set that ground rule at Florida, and the first person I did that I dismissed from the team wasn't an important player. So he did acknowledge that. Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler, and here's what you can do. Thanks to our good friends at Rick Terry Jewelry Design, you can take part in Rick Terry's Grade 8 Garmin Challenge. Get ready for Rick's Grade 8 Garmin Challenge, brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. Rick Terry Jewelry Design will provide a Garmin watch worth $1,000 to give away to one lucky listener to Off the Hook Sports when we reach 8,000 subscribers. So we're getting there quickly. Viewers, listeners, readers, fans are welcome to enter. All you have to do is join Hooker's Corner. That's completely free. A free membership will get you eligible for Rick Terry's Grade 8 Garmin Challenge. But we'll also, if you would like to be a paying member, we will be giving away a John Henderson mini autograph helmet for the week of July. And that's brought to you by our good friends at Sports Treasure. So whether or not you're a free member or you want to be a paid member, we would greatly appreciate you being a part of increased recruiting coverage on Hooker's Corner. I want to go ahead and share that right now so I know that I can find it. I'm figuring this thing out one step at a time. Do you feel confident in me right now, Caleb? Because I do not. I'm waiting because I could share it, but I'm now just seeing if you can.
Just share it. Share it. No, there it is. I got it. There you go. So just click that QR code now. It's right there for $9.98. You'll receive a Celebrate 98 book or t-shirt, your choice. Everybody loves a good Hooker shirt. Or we'll be gladly to take care of you with a book. And you can also be a part of Hooker's Corner where I guess it's, is it Wednesday? Yeah, we'll be giving away that John Henderson helmet. So you want to go ahead and join now. You got the QR code. You can do it right there. We greatly appreciate you. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a